There's something deeply unsettling about forests. During the day, they're serene, peaceful escapes full of life. But at night, they become something else entirely. A place where light disappears, paths vanish, and you're left alone with the silence, and whatever else might be lurking among the trees. Tonight, we're diving into 3 bone-chilling forest horror stories you shouldn't listen to alone. These aren't campfire tales or spooky legends. These are true horror stories, shared by people who ventured into the woods and encountered something they were never meant to see, or survive. If you're a fan of paranormal encounters, true ghost stories, and creepy stories whispered in the dark, then go ahead and like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because these chilling tales are about to take you deep into the heart of fear. Now, turn off the lights, put on your headphones. And don't listen alone. This story is about The Watcher in the Pines. Mason was an avid backpacker, solo hikes, rough terrain, remote areas. He lived for the stillness of the forest, for the peace. But one weekend, deep in the Appalachian wilderness, he discovered something that would shake him to his core. He set out early in the morning, planning a 3-day loop through an unmarked section of the woods. Locals didn't talk about the area much. Some called it sacred. Others called it cursed. Mason just thought it sounded like the perfect spot to escape from the world. The first day was uneventful. But that night, as he set up camp beneath a canopy of old pines, things began to change. He noticed the woods had gone unnaturally silent. No insects. No birds. Just quiet. He dismissed it as isolation, until around 2 a.m., when he woke up to a sound just outside his tent. Crunch. Crunch. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Pacing in circles. Mason held his breath, clutching his pocketknife. He called out, "Hello." No response. But the footsteps stopped. Dead still. Then, from just behind the nylon wall of his tent, a whisper. "You're not alone out here." He tore open the tent and shined his flashlight, but nothing. Just the endless dark of the forest. The trees loomed like silent giants. No trail. No prints. The next morning, he found something disturbing. A circle of pine cones had been laid around his tent, perfectly symmetrical. In the center sat a single, old coin. It looked ancient. Worn. Carved with strange symbols. He packed and left immediately, but the forest didn't let him go so easily. The woods seemed to shift, trails leading nowhere, his compass spinning. And at every turn, just out of the corner of his eye, a shadow. He didn't sleep that night. The footsteps came again, louder. Closer. The whispers grew stronger, murmuring in a language he couldn't understand. And then he saw it, a figure, tall and impossibly thin, its face completely featureless. It stood among the trees, just watching. Mason ran. 4 hours. No sense of direction. Just pure, primal fear. When he finally stumbled onto a road and flagged down a truck, the driver wouldn't even let him speak. He just looked at Mason's face and said, "Let me guess, you went into the pines." Locals call it the Watcher's Grove. Legend says it doesn't like strangers, and if it marks you, it follows you. Mason moved across the country, but he still wakes up some nights in sleep paralysis, unable to move, with that same whisper in his ear. You're still not alone. Since that trip, Mason's life has never been the same. He started experiencing paranormal activity in his home, whispers in the hallway, cold drafts with no source, and shadows that dart just out of view. He even caught a glimpse of the same featureless figure in the reflection of a window late one night. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching. In one of the most disturbing incidents, he awoke to find pine needles scattered across his bedroom floor, wet, fresh, and smelling of forest earth. His windows were locked. His doors secured. but the scent of the woods clung to the air like a warning. He knew, somehow, that it had found him again. Mason eventually reached out to a local folklorist who had written about true scary stories and haunted forest legends. She told him that the Watcher wasn't a ghost, but something older. Something tied to the land. An entity born from silence, shadows, and fear. Once it had your scent, it would never truly let you go. She warned him. Do not return to the forest. It already took part of you. Now, Mason records his dreams. He sleeps surrounded by salt lines and protective charms, desperate to keep the entity at bay. But none of it works. The ghostly whispers have returned, this time louder. More frequent. The other night, one came from his closet, chilling him to the bone. You left the forest, but the forest didn't leave you. This story is about the man with no eyes. Taylor was working a temporary logging job in the dense forests of northern Washington, far from town, with only a small crew of workers and a radio for emergencies. It was grueling, cold, and isolated, but it paid well, and Taylor needed the cash. On his second day, he wandered off the path during lunch break, drawn by a strange humming sound echoing through the trees. It was subtle at first, like wine through hollow wood, but then it became melodic. Purposeful. Human. Curious, Taylor followed the sound deeper into the woods. That's when he saw the cabin. It was old, nearly swallowed by vines and moss, standing crooked like it didn't belong. There were no paths to it, no clearings, just trees. But the door was open. Taylor called out, but no answer. He stepped inside. The cabin was empty. Dusty. Abandoned. Except for the floor, covered in carvings. Circles, runes, strange symbols gouged into the wood. And in the center, a single wooden chair. On it sat a figure. A man. Still. Silent. He was pale, like wax. Wearing old clothes that looked handmade. But what chilled Taylor to his bones were his eyes, or rather, the absence of them. His eye sockets were hollow. Dark. Deep. Empty. The man smiled. Taylor turned and ran. But he could hear something behind him, not footsteps, but whispers. Chasing him. Surrounding him. The deeper into the forest he went, the more the terrain shifted. Landmarks disappeared. His radio crackled to life, not with static, but with that same humming melody. He never found the cabin again. No one believed him. But that night, as Taylor lay in his bunk at camp, he felt a pressure on his chest. He awoke frozen in place, paralyzed, staring at the ceiling. Then he saw it, reflected in the cracked window. The man with no eyes. Standing just outside. Watching. For weeks after, Taylor saw him in his dreams, in shadows, even in the woods during his shifts. Eventually, he quit the job and moved back to the city. But sometimes, when he's walking at night and catches a reflection in a car window or store glass, he sees something just behind him. A pale face. And empty eyes. Taylor began keeping his apartment lit at all times. He avoided mirrors. But the sightings continued. Once, during a power outage, he heard the humming again, this time coming from inside his living room. When the lights came back, he found muddy footprints leading from the front door to the center of the room, and stopping there. No exit. No trail. Just silence. The haunting intensified. Taylor experienced full-blown sleep paralysis, his body frozen as he lay trapped in bed, watching that same eyeless figure rise from the foot of his mattress. Its mouth never moved, but the ghostly whispers echoed through his mind, speaking words in a language he could feel but not understand. They sounded like a chant. A curse. Desperate, he reached out to a paranormal researcher who specialized in true scary stories whispered in remote forests. She recognized the symbols Taylor had described from the cabin floor. They were warnings, marks meant to bind something, to trap a spirit between worlds. Whatever had been in that cabin wasn't meant to be seen. Taylor had stumbled into a haunted site, and by entering it, he'd broken the seal. The researcher said the man with no eyes was part of a local legend dating back over 100 years, a logging foreman who had gone missing, only to be found days later, sitting in that same cabin, his eyes removed, lips sewn shut. Every few decades, someone sees him again. And once you see him, he never lets you forget. Taylor moved to another country. Changed his name. Tried to start over. But every once in a while, when the wind hums low through the trees, he still hears the melody. And when he blinks, just for a second, he sees those hollow eyes staring back. This story is about the Hollow Ones. It was supposed to be a weekend getaway. Claire and her two closest friends rented a cabin deep in a forest near Oregon's coast, an old hunting lodge turned Airbnb with no Wi-Fi, no cell signal, and a promise of peaceful disconnect. The first night was perfect, campfire stories, wine, and laughter. The second night was not. Claire woke to the sound of her friend Mia sobbing quietly in the living room. When she went to check, Mia was sitting near the fireplace, staring blankly ahead, her eyes wide and glassy. "Mia, what's wrong?" "They're in the trees," she whispered. Claire turned to look out the window. Nothing. Just the fog-drenched woods. But Mia wouldn't move or respond for hours. When she finally came back to herself, she couldn't remember anything past 1 a.m. The next night, it was Claire who woke up screaming. She had dreamed of figures standing in the forest, just at the edge of the tree line. Dozens of them. Their faces stretched long and hollow, like melting masks. They didn't speak. They only watched. And when she woke up, her feet were dirty. Like she had been walking barefoot through the woods. Her friend Mark checked the front door. It was unlocked. Wide open. That night, none of them slept. The cabin creaked. The fireplace hissed even though no fire was lit. And outside, just beyond the window, they saw them. Figures. Silent. Motionless. Watching. The three friends huddled in the corner of the living room, clutching knives, waiting for daylight. And when the sun finally rose, the figures were gone. They left immediately. Later, Claire found an old journal in a local bookstore, written by a forest ranger from the 1970s. He described seeing the same hollow-faced people near that very cabin. Said they came out during thick fog. Said they weren't ghosts or people, but something in between. The final page of the journal simply read, "If they see you, don't run. Don't look away. Don't sleep." To this day, Claire sleeps with the lights on. Her therapist says the dreams are trauma-induced. But sometimes, she still wakes up with dirt on her feet. And once, her neighbor swore she saw Claire standing outside at 3 a.m., staring up at the moon. But Claire was asleep. Or at least, she thought she was. Ever since that trip, Claire has experienced paranormal encounters, electronics flickering, whispers that come from nowhere, and strange figures appearing in reflections. She once recorded herself sleeping to prove it was all in her head, but what she captured was disturbing. The footage showed her rising slowly at 2:47 a.m., walking to the door, and whispering a phrase over and over in a voice that didn't sound like her own. "They're in the trees." One night, she awoke in full sleep paralysis, her eyes fixed on the shadowy shape of a figure standing at the foot of her bed. Its face was blank, a hollow mask of skin, stretched and empty. The room was filled with a low, vibrating hum. Not a sound, but a sensation that rattled her bones and pressed on her chest like a weight. She later learned from a folklorist that similar sightings of the Hollow Ones have been documented for decades across dense forest regions, always during fog, always in groups, and always after someone speaks of them out loud. Some say they are spirits of the forgotten, beings lost between worlds who hunger for presence, for memory, for hosts. Now, Claire fears she brought something back with her. Her friends refused to talk about that weekend. Mark moved to Arizona. Mia checked herself into a sleep clinic and stopped answering texts altogether. Claire has tried to go on with life, but the haunted memories, the ghostly whispers, and the sense that something is still following her never went away. The other night, her doorbell rang at exactly 1 a.m. When she checked the security cam, the feed was glitchy, static-filled, but for a moment, it cleared. And standing at the edge of the fog-drenched street, they were there. These true scary horror stories remind us that the forest is more than trees and trails. It's a place of dark secrets, ancient energies, and paranormal activity that defies explanation. From ghostly whispers among the branches to figures with no eyes, these terrifying tales prove that even the most peaceful woods can become haunted stories you'll never forget. If these chilling narratives made your heart race, be sure to like, subscribe, and share, and whatever you do, never venture into the forest alone after dark. Because the next true horror story might be yours. Stay safe out there. And remember, some trees whisper back.